Southeast Asia stopped taking orders, and a K-pop concert in Malaysia lit the match to a powder keg. January 31st, 2026. Day 6 played at KL. The venue bans large professional camera lenses, but some Korean fans ignored the rule and brought them anyway. Malaysian fans call it out, and a small argument starts on X until it stopped being small. Korean fans escalated. They say Southeast Asians have no culture of their own, that they're dependent on K-pop, and if they don't like it, they should stop listening. So Indonesian fans clapped back with Nana, their own group, built outside the Korean system. So Korean fans looked up Nana's music video and saw a rice field, and they called it Rice Civilization. That's when it crossed a line. Indonesian and Malaysian fans united, Vietnamese and Thai fans piled in, because rice fields are culturally significant across the region. And when Korean fans couldn't win the argument on X, some started mocking how Southeast Asians look, comparing them to apes. Backlash went global, and Southeast Asian users on Threads rallied for days. Western and African and other Asian countries chimed in, not on Korea's side. A camera lens rule turned into the biggest K-pop culture war in years, but it wasn't about cameras or K-pop or even Day 6. It was about who gets to look down on who. And 700 million people deciding the answer is nobody. They now call themselves the siblings.
Everyone in Southeast Asia as below us? Mind you, no one's below anyone.
Southeast Asian country that is criticizing Korea is going to be correct.
I'm John, a PhD sociologist who spent years studying Asia, and in the next few minutes, we'll learn why 5 countries, Vietnam, Indonesia, Thailand, the Philippines, and Malaysia, are done being treated as Asia's B-list. Together, that's 700 million people, double the USA. In this video, I'm going to compare them specifically to Japan and Korea, because China's a different weight class entirely, and honestly should get its own video. Also, each of these siblings deserve its own video, but I'm giving you the big picture. But back to Rice Civilization. That insult landed so hard because it has a 2,000-year history that most people don't know about. For about 2,000 years, East Asia ran on a hierarchy with China at the top. Your rank depended on how close you were to the Chinese emperor and how much respect you showed. Korea was the closest to China, the favorite, most respectful, closest in culture, and China rewarded that with trade deals and military protection. Japan sat off to the side, close enough to trade with China and copy its culture, but far enough to never fully bow to it. And whenever a Chinese dynasty got weak, Japan played pirate. It was always an awkward fit. Southeast Asia was on the outer edge. Old kingdoms like Siam and Majapahit sent gifts to China, but only when it suited them, just enough to keep the trade routes open. The system reached them, but it never owned them. So let's call it the pecking order. But Southeast Asia had its own system that most people have never heard of, the Mandala system. Power radiated from different centers, overlapping, always shifting, and kingdoms like Srivijaya, Majapahit, and Ayutthaya sent tribute to China the way you send a Christmas card to your boss Karen, politely, strategically, but without really meaning it. The tributary system was a story Beijing told itself about how the world worked. Before Bangkok or Jakarta, they were mostly just doing their own thing. The official tributary system died in 1912 when the Qing fell, but the ranking in people's hearts didn't. Japan rebuilt first in the 1950s and 60s and became the world's second largest economy. Korea followed in the 70s and 80s and got the moniker the Miracle of the Han River. Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Singapore joined Korea to form the 4 Asian Tigers boy band. Meanwhile, Southeast Asia stayed in the cheap labor tier. Same old ranking, just this time wearing t-shirts and jeans. That was the pecking order for decades. But something's been happening to the countries at the top. The boy band is aging. Japan grew less than 0.5% last year, and its population is projected to lose the equivalent of Canada's entire population by 2070. Korea managed 2% growth, and its birth rate, not even 1 baby per woman, at approximately 0.72 to 0.8. It's the lowest on Earth. The population is shrinking, and nothing the government has tried has fixed it. So the gap is closing both ways, with Southeast Asia rising while Japan and Korea are slowing down. And there's a generational split that reframes everything. The 1997 Asian financial crisis hit everyone. Indonesia's economy shrank 13% in a single year. Thailand's currency collapsed and dragged the rest of the continent down with it. That generation carried the trauma. They were grateful for any foreign money that showed up and careful not to push back. But the generation running the startups and TikTok accounts was born after that. They grew up watching Southeast Asia build, not collapse. The old hierarchy said Southeast Asia was the cheap labor, but 5 countries found 5 different ways, and none of them copied each other. And when Korean fans call it rice civilization, they were looking for a hierarchy that's 2,000 years old. The 5 countries we're about to look at are dismantling it in real time. Vietnam went first. 5:47 a.m. in Bắc Ninh province. Lin clocks in at Samsung's biggest smartphone factory, part of an operation employing nearly 90,000 workers across Vietnam that accounts for more than 1 in every 8 of the country's export dollars. She's 26, earns roughly $350 a month, and sends part of it home to her parents in Thanh Hoa. Her mother worked a rice paddy, but Lin assembles circuit boards for a phone that sells for more than her monthly salary. Bắc Ninh used to be known for rice fields and folk songs. Now it's one of Vietnam's busiest industrial zones, because the factories that used to run in China are moving south. And it's not just Western companies trying to avoid Chinese tariffs. Chinese manufacturers are moving out too. A plastics company out of Dongguan was told by its clients, no Vietnam base, no new orders, because the math is simple. Vietnamese factory workers earn about $3 an hour. In China, it's more than double that at around $6.50. And foreign investment into Vietnamese manufacturing hit over $25 billion in 2024. Vietnam's economy grew about 8% in 2025. And you can see where that growth is coming from. Over $100 billion in electronic exports. You got Samsung, Apple, Intel, and Foxconn all running major production out of the country. 2 out of every 3 AirPods on the planet are projected to be made in Vietnam. So is 1 in 5 iPads and Apple Watches. So it's not just one company, this whole thing is a national pattern. But this generation isn't happy assembling other countries' products forever. The Vietnamese government started picking which factories to let in. High-tech and semiconductor companies got fast-tracked. Low-value factories got turned away. And then there's VinFast, a Vietnamese EV company not assembling for someone else, but exporting its own cars to the US and Europe. Auto deliveries more than doubled in 2025. E-scooter sales went nearly 5 times over. Lin's mother worked a rice paddy. Lin assembles phones. Her fiance builds AirPods down the road in Haiphong. They're planning to get married and have 2 or more kids. And they've heard how Japan is only hitting about 0.7 kids from a video here, but don't really understand why. Isn't Japan supposed to be well off? Now Lin isn't real, but that story is playing out across Bắc Ninh and Haiphong right now. Lin isn't angry at Korea. She hardly thinks about Korea until something like Day 6 blows up on her feed between shifts. Then she has an opinion, and then she moves on, because she has factory work to finish. Quick plug, if you like these types of deep dives, please like and sub. Vietnam has choices now, and is choosing which investments to reject. These countries aren't grateful just to be invited anymore, they're setting the terms. And Indonesia took that logic further than anyone, and it told the entire EU to go away. In 2020, President Jokowi looked at Indonesia's nickel. They produce over half of the world's supply, and it's essential for every battery for cars and robots. And then he decided to ban raw exports entirely. The message was simple, and kind of ballsy for a country that used to take whatever deal it could get. If you wanted Indonesian nickel, build your factory here. Over $15 billion in Chinese, Korean, and Japanese investment followed. Smelters went up, jobs materialized, and for the first time, Indonesia had power over the companies that used to boss them around.
You shall not pass!
The EU threw a tantrum and took Indonesia to the World Trade Organization. A panel ruled against Indonesia, and Indonesia's response was basically, we don't care.
I'm here to tell you right now, we don't care.
Let me tell you.
We don't care.
Before the ban, Indonesia earned about $1 billion a year from nickel. After it, nearly $21 billion. The government is now applying the same logic to bauxite, copper, and over 20 other commodities. But nickel is only half the story. Indonesia has nearly 290 million people. It's the 4th biggest country on Earth. The median age is just 31, and more than 2/3 of the country is old enough to work. Korea built its entire economic miracle with about 40 million. Indonesia has nearly 8 times that. And the digital economy is where the population actually spends its time and money. GoTo, a merger of 2 huge Indonesian companies, became Southeast Asia's first super app. Rides, payments, food delivery, and online shopping, all in one app. Think of it like WeChat in China. Over half of Indonesian online shoppers have bought through live streams, and they convert at roughly 3 times the rate of normal online shopping. But the real audience play is actually esports. MPL Indonesia, the Mobile League's Pro League, pulled over 113 million hours watched in season 15. That makes it the most watched domestic esports league on earth. I'm not talking just mobile, it's all of esports. An Indonesian audience watching an Indonesian league built on the game that Southeast Asia made its own. So the resource play got international attention, but Thailand wasn't betting on factories or minerals, it was betting on something weirder: surgery, ghosts, and pad thai. Thailand has always been the destination. Backpackers, beach towns, temple circuits. I had my honeymoon there almost 2 decades ago. It got 33 million international visitors in 2025, more than any other country in Southeast Asia. That part isn't news. But a growing chunk of those visitors didn't come for the beach. They came for surgery, over 1 million of them. Thailand is one of the world's top medical tourism destinations. Bumrungrad International Hospital in Bangkok is the largest private hospital in Southeast Asia, treating patients from over 190 countries. A heart valve replacement that costs 150 grand in the US runs 25 grand in Bangkok, and they're comparable in terms of equipment and skilled doctors. So Japanese retirees, Korean executives, and American families fly to Thailand for procedures their own healthcare systems price them out of, and then they chill at the beach after. Thailand also exports nightmares. The Thai horror export is a completely different aesthetic, and like K-drama, Netflix has been a huge distributor. Shudder in 2004, P-Back in 2013 at $33 million gross. The Medium in 2021, all rooted in Buddhist beliefs about spirits, karma, and the afterlife. The Thai word for ghost is Pi, and there are dozens of types. P-Pop, that possess the living, P-Klasu, floating heads with trailing organs at night. It comes from a completely different belief system. So when Netflix puts Thai horror in front of a global audience, it's selling a whole belief system that most Western viewers have never seen. So it's fresh and it stands out. And then there's food. In 2002, 20 years before Korea started pushing Korean food worldwide, the Thai government launched Global Thai. The pitch? Put a Thai restaurant in every major city on earth. It worked. There are almost 7,000 Thai restaurants in the US alone, built from a Thai-American diaspora of just 300,000 people. That's one of the highest cuisine to population ratios of any ethnic food in America. And Thai cuisine beat K-drama to the punch. Pad Thai and green curry had a 20-year head start. And the Thai government isn't hiding the playbook. They're spending over 5 billion baht on culture. They built a new agency for that. And their One Family, One Soft Power program aims to train 20 million Thais by 2027. They studied the Korean playbook, and then they wrote their own. But the next country we're looking at didn't need a playbook, because its soft power has been running for over a century. "3:14 a.m. in a hospital outside Houston. Grace checks the IV drip on a post-surgery patient, logs vitals, and moves to the next room. She's been on her feet for 9 hours now, and during her 15-minute break, she opens her phone and sends $400 home to Leyte, her mother's medication, her niece's school fees, and a little extra for the house they're rebuilding after the last typhoon. Grace is one of roughly 130,000 Filipino nurses working in American hospitals, and Filipinos make up 4% of the US nursing workforce while being 1% of the population. Like Lynn, Grace isn't real, but that ratio is essential, underpaid, and everywhere. The Philippines is one of the only countries with an entire government department dedicated to sending its own citizens overseas. It's called the DMW, Department of Migrant Workers, and they have over 2 million deployed in 2023 alone. Nurses in America, domestic helpers in Hong Kong, construction workers in the Gulf, and seafarers. 1 in 4 of the world's merchant mariners is Filipino. Roughly 470,000 people crewing tankers and container ships across every ocean. 90% of global trade moves by sea. and a quarter of the people moving it are from this one country. And the people export scales way beyond manual labor. The Philippines is the world's call center capital. Nearly 2 million BPO workers, pulling in over $40 billion a year. Virtual assistants working for $400 to $700 a month versus $4,000 or more in the US. But cost isn't really why they win. There's a Filipino word for it, malasakit. It means genuine care that goes beyond what's required, like spending 10 minutes more making sure your phone is working right. Cost cutting wins you the contract, but malasakit, that wins you the repeat business. The reason the Philippines dominates English language services over Indonesia or Vietnam goes back 125 years, and it starts with a ship. In 1901, 600 American teachers sailed into Manila Bay on the USS Thomas and built an English language school system from scratch. Add 350 years of Spanish rule. That made the Philippines the only Catholic country in Asia. On top of that, add a US immigration law from 1965 that opened the door. And there's even more stuff before that. And then you throw in all the small stuff, like Spanish last names, American first names, the Catholic faith celebrating Christmas and Easter. For Western employers, Filipinos just feel familiar. No other Southeast Asian workforce comes close. And now the diaspora, which is a fancy word for dispersed people, that is built for labor is distributing culture.
In a video shared by the MTV Europe Music Awards, the group's leader Joanna thanks the award-giving body for the recognition.
BINI won MTV EMA Best Asia Act, the first Filipino group to take the award. And they also took Break2do's International Breakthrough Artist over Chappelle Roan and Benson Boone. SB19 beat Stray Kids and TXT for Break2do's international male group. And then you throw in Filipino Americans like Joe Coy with 5 and counting Netflix specials. The machine pushing them wasn't a sole agency. It was Filipino communities in LA, Dubai, Toronto, and Sao Paulo. 10 million people already in every major city on Earth, averaging close to 4 hours a day on social media, which is among the highest in the world. So Korea built its pop culture industry from the government down. The Philippines is doing the opposite, from the ground up, powered by diaspora. The Philippines doesn't export products, it exports people. And every one of those 130,000 nurses working American hospital floors is one fewer back home. So Vietnamese factories, Indonesian nickel, Thai hospitals, and Filipino nurses. Every country so far has a face. Malaysia has everyone else's. Malaysia has a bit of everything. Semiconductors in Penang, over 50 global firms handling 13% of the world's chip testing and assembly. Palm oil plantations feeding roughly a quarter of the world's supply. A state oil company, Petronas, that has been on the Fortune Global 500 for years. In Kuala Lumpur, KL, runs the world's largest Islamic finance hub. Over $600 billion in banking products designed to follow Islamic law, serving Muslim markets from Jakarta to Jeddah. So yeah, Malaysia does factories, it does commodities, it does finance, but none of that explains the number that turned heads in 2024. Over $30 billion in data center investment landed here in a single year, triple the year before.
For your consideration, the Jericho.
And the reason comes down to 3 things none of the other countries in the same video can offer at the same time. 1. English works here. Malaysia is one of the few countries in Southeast Asia where English functions as a real business language at scale. Contracts, boardrooms, technical documentation, it all runs in English with no translator, given Malaysia's British colonial history. And that's why big global companies have put their Asian offices here for decades. Malaysia sits right in the middle, between the head offices in America or Europe and the factories across Asia. And they get the best of both the East and the West. 2. The Chinese Bridge. Nearly 1 in 4 Malaysians is ethnic Chinese, which is the largest concentration in Southeast Asia. It's the reason why ByteDance, Alibaba, and Huawei chose Malaysia for cloud and AI buildouts. They speak the language, they understand the culture, and the business connections between KL and mainland China go back generations. A big chunk of that $30 billion followed the Chinese community here. The editors of this video you're watching are Malaysian Chinese. They grew up hearing the same hierarchy these 5 countries are rejecting. 3. Singapore's spillover. In 2019, Singapore froze new data center construction. New builds were banned for 3 years, and when it lifted, the requirements got a lot stricter. Johor is literally across a bridge, same time zone, for a fraction of the price. Malaysia became Singapore's overflow, and now it's the biggest data center market in all of Southeast Asia. Vietnam builds, Indonesia digs, Thailand treats, the Philippines sends. and Malaysia connects. So the siblings, 5 different strategies, running simultaneously, and all of them are up and coming. So we got 5 strategies with no coordination, and somehow combined ASEAN trade sits at roughly $4 trillion, with these 5 countries driving most of it. But before I get accused of cheerleading, the math isn't all sunshine, and more on that later. But right now, let's talk a bit about integration. There's a new payment system that lets you scan a QR code in Jakarta and pay in Thai baht. It works across 8 countries, and they've signed trade deals with both China and the US-led Pacific Bloc, keeping both doors open, but committing to neither. But that doesn't explain why a camera lens rule at a K-pop concert turned into a fight about respect. The friction runs deeper than entertainment. Korean beauty brands use Thai models in ads, but don't build anything in Thailand. And Southeast Asian workers in Korean and Japanese companies still deal with what they feel is skin color bias and lower pay. Vietnamese marriage migrants in Korea report abuse and visa dependency. Take Samsung, the company employing nearly 90,000 Vietnamese workers. Reports of toxic chemical exposure at Samsung's Vietnamese factories have drawn scrutiny. And the relationship between Korean management culture and local labor expectations remains a friction point. And the generational break tells the story best through what people say online. The older generation still talks about catching up to Japan and Korea. The mid-career crowd is more practical. They look for deals where their parents used to say thank you. And then you scroll to the youngest voices and the framing disappears completely. The idea of measuring Southeast Asia against Korea at all strikes them as genuinely confusing. Just look at X or Threads for yourself. The Mandela system matters here. Southeast Asia was never truly subordinate in their own worldview. That self-image never fully disappeared. And the pecking order of Asia means nothing to a generation that never felt it.
I don't even know what to say about this. Or like higher up there, and then Southeast Asians are like lower.
But let's talk about an important nuance about Japan. Japan committed atrocious war crimes in Southeast Asia during World War II, but the anger against Korea feels different. Japan did terrible things in the past, and outrage flares up once in a while when disagreements arise, but Korea is the establishment doing the gatekeeping right now, and that's what people feel every day. So on Southeast Asian social media, according to media reports, posts that criticize Korean pop culture get 10 to 20 times more engagement than posts praising it. And the tone isn't only hate, it's disappointment from the people who love Hallyu, realize the respect went only one way. And the siblings haven't fully caught up yet. Thailand's entire medical tourism industry generates roughly $5 to $6 billion. The broader Korean wave entertainment industry generates over double that at $12 billion. So the gap is real. And the region isn't all rising equally. Cambodia, Laos, and Myanmar pull the average down. What's coming up with AI and automation could wipe out half of the factory and call center jobs across Southeast Asia. Debt and automation, those are rich country problems. And the fact that Southeast Asia is dealing with them now means they've arrived. Every country in this video has been colonized, sanctioned, couped, looted, or all of the above. The Philippines got 350 years of it. Indonesia got a dictator for 32. Thailand has had at least a dozen successful military coups since 1932, more than any other country in the world. Vietnam was cut off from the world until the 90s, and Malaysia lost $4.5 billion to its own government. And there's real danger on the horizon, with all of their total fertility rates falling below replacement. None of them started from zero, they started from below it, and they're building anyway. So when Korean fans call the siblings rice civilization, the region pushed back with receipts. It didn't just wake up. Day 6 KL was just when everyone else noticed. For 2,000 years, the tributary system said power flows from one center. Southeast Asia never fully bought it, and the generation that clapped back at rice civilization, they're not asking for a seat at the old table. They're building their own. 700 million people, proving what the Mandela system always assumed, that power doesn't flow in one direction, it radiates. If you like this video, like this one. And if you made it this far, don't forget to like and sub.